The 1970 Dodge Charger RT 426 Hemi is one of the hottest muscle cars ever, and we've got a great one to show you. There is certainly a lot to like about the 1970 Dodge Charger, especially if it's this model, which is the RT, complete with the 426 Hemi V8 under the hood. The first thing that you notice about this car is how cool it looks. This was the last year for this style of Charger. It came out in 1968 and ran through 68, 9, and 1970. And for 1970, the car is largely unchanged except for a few minor details. The grille is a little bit different with the chrome surround. This has a new hood for 1970, and the RT models have a new scoop at the front side of the door. The RT designation had been around for a few years, and of course that stood for Road Track, which meant this car was designed, at least marketed, for high-speed road performance and outstanding track performance. We love spending cars with these times. We love spending time with these cars because we keep discovering new details, like how the front bumper extends forward, but the grille wraps inward. But you don't really notice it until you spend some time staring at it. This car was built on October 15th of 1969, making it a fairly early 1970 model. This car was built in the St. Louis, Missouri Dodge plant, and it's believed to be the only one that is finished in paint code EB3, which is light blue metallic, complete with a black vinyl top. And the vinyl top and all of the interior are original to the car. It's had a repaint, but it is a completely numbers matching car. It's wearing everything that it came with from the factory. It's a very, very complete car, and it is in just outstanding condition. When we were shooting the video on this thing, our whole crew had to stop and just stare at it for a few minutes because the color combination is just very, very stunning. That EB3 Light Blue Metallic contrasts beautifully with the very subtle red accents on the RT badge and the red ring on the dog dish style hubcaps that are floating on that blue steel wheel. And those wheels are all 15x7s from the factory and F60 by 15-inch tires all the way around. Another interesting option on this car is the code V8W, which are the white transverse stripes that wrap around the back of the car. That white stripe adds just a hint of high performance to the outside of the car. But of course, we know all the real action is under the hood. That knife edge hood is pretty wild. The legend of the 426 Hemi is bigger than the actual thing, but for good reason. This engine provided a totally different experience. Where most big cube V8s are all about low-end torque, a 426 Hemi will keep making power until you let off or it lets go. When you raise the hood on a 426 Hemi-powered car, you're greeted with a giant engine. Of course, they called them the elephant motor, and that's largely because the valve covers and the width of the engine are so big that they completely fill up a rather large engine bay like you have on this Charger. And it's for good reason. The reason why you have such a big valve cover is because of the design of the rocker arms and that hemispherical shaped head. The combustion chamber inside that cylinder head is a semi-sphere or a hemispherical design, which was designed to allow for higher compression, but it was also designed to get air and fuel mixture in and exhaust mixtures out as fast and as efficiently as possible. And where these engines differ from the other big blocks is their ability to breathe freely and rev higher. That cylinder head design really allowed for much more airflow and took advantage of the dual 4-barrel carburetors. So these were rated from the factory at 425 horsepower and 425 foot-pounds of torque. But when you saw these things on the street, it wasn't a really low RPM torque monster like the 440 was, because these things came to life at higher RPM, which made for interesting performance. They surely had enough power to burn the tires, from a dead stop. But as that tachometer climbed and the RPMs raised, and you crossed 3,000, got into 4,000, got into 5,000 RPM, and even north of there, that's when the Hemi really came to life. And that's also why these cars did so well in NASCAR, because it seemed like the faster you spun them, the more power they made. Now in street trim, these things were good for mid 13-second quarter miles, about 105 mile per hour, and a 0 to 60 time of around 6 seconds, which is pretty good for such a big car. But even though it was a big car, they did have a pretty aerodynamic shape, and they sliced through the wind cleanly. So the top speed is estimated around 130 miles an hour for this big sled. The rest of the driveline in our 1970 Charger consists of a 3-speed automatic TorqueFlite 727 transmission, and the rear gear ratio is a 355-to-1. So this car is designed to be driven hard. That RT package also means our car has a heavy-duty front suspension package with oversized torsion bars and a 0.94-inch anti-roll bar, which meant that, again, even though it's a big car, it took turns pretty well, and it did not exhibit a whole ton of body roll, again making for a very fun ride. This is kind of an understated color combination for a Hemi car. It's called EB3 Medium Metallic Blue. You got your black vinyl top and the white RT stripe around the tail. But it really doesn't matter what color you paint these cars, because as soon as you stomp on a Hemi, it's out of sight. As was popular for Chrysler products of the early 1970s, you see a lot of wood grain in this car. The whole dashboard is clad in a horizontal wood grain pattern, and the gauges consist of a rather large tachometer to the left, which has a built-in clock in the middle, and then to the right of that you find a 150 mile an hour circular speedometer. Other gauges include a fuel gauge, a temperature gauge, an oil pressure gauge, and an alternator gauge, which showed if the system was charging or not. You'll find more wood grain on the full-length console and the automatic shifter handle, which looks remarkably like a manual 4-speed handle, but it's not. In this case, it is an automatic car. The 426 Hemi cars did not have air conditioning, and this one also has an AM radio, so this car was not necessarily designed to be full of creature comforts. And although it's not really a luxury car, it does have a pair of very comfortable bucket seats and a large rear seat. So even though this thing has a 426 Hemi, it's still kind of practical because you could fit a lot of people in it and drive it comfortably every day. Check this one out. This piece of trim is actually attached to the front window glass, so if you roll the window down, the back glass is totally clean like an open hardtop. One of the reasons why this car looks as good as it does today is it was sold brand new in Tyler, Texas, and it lived most of its life in the dry Texas climate, and it's been certified by Dodge expert Galen Govier and has a lot of paperwork documenting the fact that it is a true numbers-matching Hemi Dodge Charger RT. It's a very, very unique car, and while there are several in the brothers collection, this one is probably my personal favorite. It doesn't really matter where you're going if you're behind the wheel of a 426 powered. It doesn't really matter where you're going if you're behind the wheel of a Hemi powered Charger. It's going to be a fun trip. We've got a forum on our website now at MuscleCarOfTheWeek.com where you can get together with other muscle car fans and go do your laundry. You can come to our website at MuscleCarOfTheWeek.com because we put up a forum now where you can connect with other muscle car fans. And you can also do that on the Facebook page and watch our YouTube channel. You can get in your Hemi Charger and come to our forum. You don't like that? 9,000 takes. It doesn't really matter where you're going if you're behind the wheel of a Hemi powered Charger. It's going to be a heck of a ride. We now have a forum on our website at MuscleCarOfTheWeek.com. Come on by if you like this stuff. It doesn't really matter where you're going if you're behind the wheel of a Hemi powered Charger. It's going to be a heck of a ride. We now have a forum on our Muscle Car of the Week website. If you like cars like this, you should come by and check it out. We'll see you next time.